So when you think about Linux, you probably don't think that it's all that controversial, but there are some controversial parts of it. And I'm not just talking about from an outsider's point of view. There are things that are controversial about Linux when it comes to everyday use and the things that we kind of all fight about. And when you think about it that way, Linux is actually pretty controversial. So what I want to do today is talk about 8 or 9 things that have spiced up the Linux usage, if you will. The things that kind of light a fire under some people's asses about how they want to do things a certain way. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we jump in, if you'd leave a thumbs up on this video, I'd be really appreciative. It'd really help the channel. So we're just going to jump in with the biggest one, or at least the one that I think is the biggest one, and that is systemd. There is a fairly large amount of people out there who just can't stand the systemd as a thing, and that people use it, and then it's the standard. It really bugs them, so much so that many people have gone off and created their own init systems to use instead. Now, there are some older init systems out there that are also still in use for the exact same reason. People just kind of stick with them because systemd is evil and bloated, if you know what I mean. So systemd has to be, I think, the first one on the list, just because it's the one that people seem to fight about the most. Now, I'm not sure if this will forever be true, because there has been some softening around the edges when it comes to the anti-systemd people, or at least it feels that way to me. But still, there are a lot of people out there who would just swear by their dislike of systemd and everything that goes along with it. So that's number 1 on the list. Number 2 on the list, and this is a weird one, is the free software versus the open source people. Now, this is a debate that just does not matter to me whatsoever, but there are people out there who are very, very staunchly in the free software space, and there are those who are very, very in the open source space. Now, me personally, I'm asking, like, what the fuck's the difference? I thought that they were both the same, but they're actually not. So if you look it up, you'll see that the free software movement is a moral and ethical movement. It's based on the belief that software should be free in the sense of freedom. And this is the Libre people, the people who really truly care about the Libre part of the open source. And really, that's the wrong word, the freedom part of FOSS, right? So these are the Free Software Foundation type people. The open source movement, if I got this right, are less interested in the moral aspects of the movement and more into how it actually affects the source code and the availability of it and the developmental benefits of open source. Now, it's possible that I have that completely wrong, because as I said before, this doesn't matter to me whatsoever. I had to go look up the difference. It's how little it actually makes sense to me. So if I got that wrong, I apologize, but there is this apparently a debate between free software and open source, and I knew that it was there, I just didn't get it. So there you go. There's a controversy for you if it matters to you. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And I think that this one is bigger than the last one, but not quite as big as systemd, so I'm going to say that it's the package manager debate. My package manager is better than your package manager, and there are people out there who will swear by the package manager that they use. Now, personally, I'm not one of those people. I like Zypper. I'm an OpenSUSE fanboy, if you will. I like Zypper. I think it's fine. I will never tell you that it's the best package manager. I don't think I've ever encountered a best package manager. They're all fine. And, there are some that are better than others, but I will not say that one is better than the other, or any of the others. So, for those of you who are very attached to your package manager, you've probably gotten into Twitter fights or Discord fights with people who disagree with you. And in that case, this is a controversial topic. And part of the reasons why we have so many distros, at least a small part of it, is that people would take a distro and decide, well, I don't like their package management system, so I'm going to create my own. We'll get Pac-Man out of the deal, or we'll get apt out of the deal, or we'll get DNF out of the deal, right? People just create their own thing, and that's part of creating the independent distros, which are kind of the basis for everything else these days. And even newer distros that were kind of created, things like Solus, they decided they wanted to create their own package manager. So they did. So there are more modern examples of distro maintainers deciding that the baseline kind of default package managers that we've had forever aren't good enough, so they've created their own. And the question we all have to ask is, when's enough? Do we really need more package managers? And the answer to that is, of course, yes. So, so that's another controversy that has kind of been brewing since the beginning of time. The next one is kind of connected to that, but it's a newer debate, and that's the whole containerized format of packages. I'm talking about Flatpaks and snaps. So there's actually two controversies and debates happening within this one. First is whether or not to containerize your packages at all. Some people will say, no, that's stupid. I want to use native packaging. And they have their reasons for that, whether that's, more control, less interoperability with other distros because they want more focus on actually getting it to run on their distro, so kind of watering it down and whatever. They also might have qualms with both of the major containerized formats being maintained by large corporations, so there's that. And some people just don't want to move away from the packages that they've always used, so there's that as well, and there are probably many others. On the other side of that debate are people who think that having a package that can come with you no matter what distro you're on is pretty freaking awesome. And they want to use that thing. And they will also have other benefits like security and being able to contain and control permissions and all sorts of stuff. So which side of that debate you're on really depends on your experiences going through Linux and how you want to adapt to using it. But still, it's something that people have been fighting on for quite some time now. The other controversy that's kind of within this one is snaps versus Flatpaks themselves. Those are the two major containerized formats, and which one you use, you're kind of becoming a part of that team. Most people, I think, these days are on the Flatpak side of things. Most people dislike snap. I shouldn't say most people. A lot of people dislike snaps and would prefer Flatpaks. There are those people who really like snaps and will never use a Flatpak. And then there's the app images people, and nobody likes them, guys. So I'm just kidding. I just don't like app images. There's nothing wrong with the people who use it. That was a justification if I ever heard one. All right, the next one is probably the oldest one on the list. Well, maybe not the oldest one. Package manager debate is probably the oldest one. But Gnome versus KDE, which desktop environment is the best? The answer to that question is obviously neither of those. They both suck. That's just my opinion. But the point here is that we've never actually been able to answer that question, and it's just something that has existed since Gnome and KDE have been around. So which one you prefer really depends on how you use Linux, how you use your computer, how many options you prefer to have, all that stuff. And even if you don't take any of that stuff into account, sometimes you're just a GNOME workflow kind of guy, or maybe you prefer the workflow of KDE or the development cycle of KDE or the development cycle of GNOME. Which one you choose really doesn't matter, but chances are, if you're a desktop environment user, you are on one side of this debate. Which one it is, again, will depend. Of course, then there are people who will buck the trend and use XFCE or Mate or Cosmic or Cinnamon, those people. But in the grand scheme of things, that's a fairly small minority of people. The vast majority of people, I think, probably use GNOME, and KDE would be a second place thing, and they're mostly because most distros default to using GNOME. But there's still a debate here to be had, and it's also a debate that we've been having for, like I said, a very long time. The next one on the list is one that I think a lot of people care about more than they'll admit to, and that is that Red Hat and Canonical seem to have a very large influence on Linux. This isn't really a versus debate, but more of a, man, those corporations do surely have their greedy fingers in Linux, and that may not be a good thing. And then there are folks that think that it is a good thing. So I guess it could be a versus debate. But there is an argument to be had that Red Hat and Canonical have too much influence over the direction Linux goes. Specifically Red Hat, who seems to develop everything that we use. Systemd, Wayland, GNOME, all of those are primarily, or at least somewhat primarily, developed by people who work for Red Hat. And that influence causes things to go in a certain direction. And some people don't think that that's a good thing. And some people think that it is a good thing. So it is a controversy that has been happening for a while, and it increased quite a lot when IBM purchased Red Hat. When they become more of a corporation than just an open source company, people saw them becoming a little bit more evil and a little bit less towards the open source friendliness that they'd always espoused. So there's that as well. Canonical, nobody likes Canonical. I don't know if that idea is legitimate or not, but pretty much everybody that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of people in the Linux community, they just don't care for canonical all that much, and they usually have specific reasons for that. Usually lack of interest in the desktop, or putting the Amazon thing in the dock, or things like that. Bad decisions in the past have led a lot of people to just dislike canonical, and their influence over Linux is still something that kind of peeves a lot of people. So that's another one that's made the list. The next one is actually quite connected on that, but it's from external factors. That companies like Microsoft and Google and Intel have a phenomenal impact on the direction the way Linux goes. Not so much the Linux desktop, but the Linux kernel. They all contribute a lot to the Linux kernel. In fact, I would say if you put those three companies combined, they contribute more to the Linux kernel than anybody else. Now, that is a thing that scares a lot of people, because the more corporate the kernel becomes, the less open source friendly, or free software friendly, I should say, it becomes, or at least that's the way they think, right? And whether or not that's true or not can be up for debate, but I do think that a lot of people really don't like the fact that Microsoft, Google, and Intel have such influence over the Linux Foundation and the kernel and Linus himself. So now, if you ask Linus how much influence Microsoft actually has over him, I don't know what he would answer, but you can't deny that in terms of contribution, Microsoft, Google, Intel do contribute an awful lot to the kernel. Now, there is an opposite side to this, that if you want your hardware to work, which is made by a lot of these companies, you want them to contribute to the Linux kernel so that that hardware has a chance to work. So there is an argument there to be had that it is a good thing. Whether or not it is or not, I'll leave that for other people to decide. The last one on the list is the one that is just weird for me, and always has been, but if you think about it from a corporate perspective, it makes sense. And that is that the Linux Foundation has a supreme disinterest in anything having to do with non-corporate Linux. And specifically, I'm talking about the Linux desktop. The Linux Foundation doesn't care about the Linux desktop at all. And that's weird, and has always been weird. They don't use Linux at the Linux Foundation. They use Macs. We know that. We've seen it, and we've seen pictures. And not like Bigfoot blurry pictures, like actual pictures that we can see them using their Macs. So they don't care about Linux, and that has always been very weird, and has caused people to not trust them when it comes to the stewardship over the Linux kernel, because they're the ones that pay Linus's check, and they control a lot of what goes on with Linux development and stuff. And because of their very corporate way of doing things, and where all of their funding comes is from major corporations, that has led to a lot of distrust over the Linux Foundation and their their stewardship over Linux itself. So those are the controversies that kind of brew up in the Linux community, the Linux sphere. I'm sure there are more. If you have those and you'd like to share them, leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, again, leave a thumbs up on this video. I'd be really appreciative. If you haven't already also subscribed to the channel, you can do so by hitting that button just below my face that says subscribe on it. If you do that, you'll get awesome content from me 2 or 3 times a week. I talk about Linuxy stuff, and I have a good time doing it. So subscribe. You probably won't be sorry. And if you are sorry, it's pretty easy to unsubscribe. It doesn't cost anything, so I appreciate it. You can follow me on Mastodon or Odyssey. Those links will be in the video description. You can also support me on Patreon at patreon.com/thelinuxcast. I release a weekly exclusive podcast for my patrons over there, and on YouTube as well, for those of you who are a member. And it's basically just 15 minutes of me talking about nonsense. And if that kind of thing interests you, you can get that by supporting me on any level on Patreon or YouTube, and that'd be awesome as well. Or you can head over to the shop, which is available at shop.thelinuxcast.org, and you can get this awesome Linux nerd hat along with all sorts of other merchandise. Of course, you can't be a Linux nerd without a Linux nerd hat, so head on over there, check that out. Thanks to everybody who does support me on Patreon and YouTube. You guys are all absolutely amazing. Without you, the channel just would not be anywhere near where it is right now. So thank you so very, very much for your support. You guys are just seriously fantastic people, and I can't say enough about my gratitude towards thee. I don't know. Anyways, thank you so very much for your support. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll catch you next time. I hope you have a good one. Adios. I keep trying new ends, and it just none of it works. Or maybe it works too well. I don't know. Anyways, see ya.